Okay, we're gonna get started obviously on the big booty cheeks bill. I covered it extensively yesterday with David Dane. As you guys know, there was a vote-a-rama that took place yesterday where, legislators were going up and down, figuring out whatever kind of like additional things that they wanted to add into the bill. And they did that and they officially passed it this morning. Obviously, this is devastating, as I warned yesterday. It is a completely psychotic wealth distribution bill. It is one of the worst bills. It is one of the most fascist bills. It is terrifying, and it's most likely going to pass in the House of Representatives too at this point. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it is what it is. America winning. We're winning. Oh, we're winning so hard. I can't wait. Why don't you play basketball with Maya? I am going to put myself on a rocket ship into the sun and launch myself directly into the orbit and never come back again. That's what I'm thinking about when you guys turn around and ask me about playing basketball with Maya while I'm talking about this like insane bill that is going to ruin all of your lives. Okay. 17 million people kicked out of health insurance as a consequence of the underfunding of Medicaid. 17 million Americans. And we don't even know the full extent of the bill yet because they basically were adding stuff. They were writing the bill up until the last moment where they voted on it. So we don't even know the full extent of it yet. But as we parse through, there are obviously a lot of the high level things that we've discussed. Medicaid cuts, work requirements for SNAP and Medicaid in general, but then also simultaneously a ton of funding for the American military, but for ICE in particular. That's a really terrifying amount of money. Why do they want to overfund ICE like this? Well, because ICE's major hurdle at this point, in order to do these like concentration camps, in order to operate as the Gestapo secret police force that Trump wants it to be, they don't have enough funding. They don't have enough people to work at ICE. Okay. Rural hospitals are gone. Underserved neighborhoods where the hospitals require Medicaid expenditures, done. Okay. At a time when rural hospitals are already in a place of crisis. Okay. It is over. It is super over. America is done. America is extra done. America was already done. It's super done now. Okay. Oh my Lord. Okay, let's see how the media is covering it though.
An important moment, a really important moment for.
What is their end goal here? What do you mean? Fascism, shock doctrine, fascism. Okay. Privatize everything. Kill the working poor. Make sure that their lives are horrible. And when they speak out, take away their citizenship. It's not happening yet. And I've been warning about this, but this is the final stage. This is how it has always worked throughout history. Okay. That is where we're at right now. We are doing domestic shock doctrine. We have been doing it since 9/11, but this is kicking it into high gear, basically hitting the last level. Okay. Yeah, Alligator Alcatraz is another quirky fascist side of this. All right, let's continue.
President Trump's legislative agenda. So much of what he does with the stroke of a pen in hopes that it gets through the courts. This is different. This is really it when it comes to what he wants Congress to do. Actually, just hang on one second. Let's listen into the Senate. Lauren.
Would you have expected us to get here as quickly as we did? Feels nuts. Yes. Trump is greatly accelerating America's fascist demise. But yeah, I mean, it's what, 6 months at this point? We're nearing 6 months. Not even 6 months yet. This is like 5 months and change. And here we are. We bombed Iran. The genocide of the Palestinians are continuing. We are accelerating weapons transfers to Israel. Hasan has been calling this for several years, and every lib has been saying he's been exaggerating. I know. And we're here. Where are the liberals? We got concentration camps with alligators on them. The lie that undocumented migrants are actually a national security issue has basically taken root, so much so that people don't even question it at this point, and that lie needs a solution.
I'm going to go back to you. We see on the screen there 50-50. This is what you suspected. Looking at this, at the chair there.
The reason we bombed Iran is to distract people from the Genius Act as they passed while all this was going on. No, dude. No, that's not the reason. Okay? The reason why we bombed Iran is so we take attention away is an insane way to approach this. No, we bombed Iran because Israel wanted us to bomb Iran. Okay? That's why we bombed Iran. It's not a distraction. Everything's a distraction. Bombing Iran is, like, depending on how Iran responds, is perhaps more consequential than even this bill in the short term. Okay? That's crazy. I feel like we're going to spend the rest of our lives trying to undo everything in this bill alone. Stuff like Medicare for all is taking a backseat to just defending the minimum we already had. Our imaginations shrink. Yes, because when Republicans come to power, they do everything they can with these kinds of budget reconciliation bills to undermine any kind of amenities that the working poor got in the past, like, 100 years or so. And they do it successfully every single time they're in power. And then the Democrats don't even claw back any of those gains. Like, they don't even restore the normal order once they are in power. This is what is also known as the ratchet effect. This is where we're at.
Yeah, it looks like it is the vice president. So we do expect a tie-breaking vote momentarily.
Is Zoran Diskurs a distriction? No.
Yeah, our team who is in the chamber, Dana, they are giving us some live updates. And I just want to preface this with the fact that until it's gavelled, nothing is final. You can hear the vice president here. What we are learning from inside the chamber is that Senator Rand Paul has voted no.
Where would you go live that's better? And they aren't concentration camps. They're not going to pull people's eyes out or gas them or kill them. They're just holding them until they can go back to their country where they came from. This is, okay, I hope you understand something here. You're never going to understand this reality because you probably are completely oblivious to history. This is exactly what the average German nationalist said about the Jews. They were like, listen, these guys represent a national security threat. It's perfectly valid to take away their citizenship, and it's perfectly valid to put them in a concentration camp as we move them away. Okay? As we move them away. We're not going to like, claw their eyes out. I don't know why that's like, we're not going to kill them. This is how the Holocaust literally happened. Okay? I'm sick and tired of explaining it. Like, what is the point? What is the point of learning about history if you are just not going to learn about history at all or take away any lessons from it whatsoever or ever use it as a decent analogy to what's going on currently? What the is happening here? Okay? Dachau was one of the first concentration camps built by Nazi Germany. It's the longest running one, opening on the 22nd of March, 1933. The camp was initially intended to intern Hitler's political opponents, which consisted of communists, social democrats, and other dissidents. It is located on the grounds of an abandoned munitions factory northeast of the medieval town of Dachau. After its opening by Heinrich Himmler, its purpose was enlarged to include forced labor and eventually the imprisonment of Jews, Romani, Germans, and Austrians that the Nazi Party regarded as criminals, and finally, foreign nationals from countries that Germany occupied or invaded. The Dachau camp system grew to include nearly 100 subcamps, which were mostly work camps. Arbeitskommandos were located throughout southern Germany and Austria. Prisoners lived in constant fear of the brutal treatment of terror detention, including standing cells, floggings, the so-called tree or pole hanging, and standing at attention for extremely long periods. There were 32,000 documented deaths at the camp and thousands that are undocumented. Approximately 10,000 to 30,000 prisoners were sick at the time of liberation. In its inception, all of these concentration camps were there to concentrate political dissidents, communists, socialists, and eventually, past the point of the Nuremberg race laws, they were there to concentrate people whose citizenship was being removed, okay? Whose citizenship was being called into question, saying Jews do not have loyalty to Germany. They are a national security threat. Do you understand? And their citizenship was being removed. Do you understand? They became nationless. They became stateless. Dachau served as a prototype and a model for other German concentration camps that followed. Almost every community in Germany had members taken away to these camps. Newspaper continually reported the removal of the enemies of the Reich to the concentration camps. As early as 1935, a jingle went around, Lieber Herrgott, mach mich stumm, das ist nicht nach Dachau komm. Dear Lord God, make me dumb silent that I may not go, that I may not to Dachau come. The camp's layout and building plans were developed by Commandant Theodor Icke and were applied to all later camps. Okay? The entrance of the gate famously had Arbeit macht frei, work makes one free. That's or work shall set you free. That was the phrase outside of the concentration camp. Also, the meaning of concentration camps has been lost on people. Concentration camps were more like brutal prison labor camps, while death camps like Auschwitz and Birkenau were places of mass slaughter. People died en masse in the concentration camps, but their sole purpose wasn't to kill people. Yes, the initial extermination measures were presented as an act of mercy to spare the constraint from the inhuman conditions of the camps. When ICE victims in this country die in captivity from heat exhaustion or overwork or starvation, it is the beginning of their manufacturing of consent for mass murder. I have straight up said that this will be what will happen. The Jews who lived in Germany were rounded up because they were Jewish, not because they came to Germany illegally. Brother, the difference between someone who has lived on U.S. soil for 5-10 years without getting the proper authorization, while simultaneously having a work clearance, not having the proper documentation to be a full-blown citizen, is just paperwork. Okay? That's what the government decides is someone who is illegal versus someone who is legal. Okay? Like, for example, your disgusting inbred parents that came here multiple generations ago by ship were afforded a benefit that these newcomers have not been afforded. Okay? So when your dumbass crawled out of your ugly ass mother's on U.S. soil to become an American citizen at the moment of birth, and your mother did the same, and your father did the same, okay, even though they were directly related to one another, brother and sister, I suspect, which is precisely the reason why your brain capacity is the way it is, right? They got this benefit. They got the proper authorization at some point in time. Do you understand? We are not doing that to the newcomers, even though they have a de facto work authorization to work here. God, you're condescending. If you consider this to be condescension, I don't know what to tell you, because I tried to explain this politely, and he turned around and gave me this short, stupid answer. Who decides who is legal and who is illegal? Okay? During chattel slavery, black people could not be free. Okay, freeing a black person was considered illegal. Slavery, on the other hand, was very much legal. Okay, the government decides who is illegal and legal. Do you understand? So, just like in Nazi Germany, the government decide Jews illegal. Okay, no longer citizens of Germany. And the reason why they justified this was because of a period of dehumanization. Lies, the economic volatility that Germany was experiencing was directly reoriented back to Jews, okay? Kind of like the economic volatility that Americans are currently experiencing is directly reoriented back to undocumented migrants. You feel me? You know how the Trump administration says unjustifiably that migrants are the reason why there's so much crime, there's so much uncertainty that you can't pay for your rent or whatever. Not to mention these don't want birthright to end now. How will babies be given or even determine if they're citizens? Right now it's with the social security number, but who will decide this? The social security department is gutted. I know, it's full-blown chaos. And it's actually really interesting because it's so chaotic that it undermines the American government. It undermines stability. It ruins everything. And I am shocked. I'm constantly in awe of how little these guys seemingly care about keeping things going, where it's just a hope and a dream that I guess is going to keep things going. Also, the Trump administration has obviously talked about denaturalizing American citizens as well. There's also a new list that is coming down the wire as well, that will have a list of all documented American citizens. Thank God we also gave hundreds of millions of dollars to Palantir so that we can do mass surveillance on the list of American citizens. Once we decide who is a political dissident and who is not a political dissident, we can also denaturalize those people, at which point we will have moved fully into the post-Nuremberg laws style Nazi Germany governance, and chatters will probably still be yelling at me when I say, this is exactly what happened in Nazi Germany. They'll go, dude, 6 million Jews haven't been slaughtered yet. It's like, yeah, yet, okay? The insane amount of money that is going to funding ICE in this bill is going to funding ICE in this bill because the Trump administration, as I have said over and over again, uses Customs and Border Patrol and ICE as his secret loyalist police, secret police service, okay? They do warrantless search and seizure. They do not abide by constitutional protections. They do not care about the constitutional protections afforded to all citizens and non-citizens alike, okay? I need people to understand there is a reason why they are funding ICE, because the number one problem with ICE doing mass deportations and setting up concentration camps is money, okay? They don't have enough money to hire enough people, okay? Now they have money, and then they will hire people. They will set up new facilities, private prisons, by the way, most likely. Holy shit, your friends are absolutely brain dead. What are you talking about, Lamau? One question, and everyone is experiencing heartbreak. Get a hobby, says Parishu. One of the funniest parts about this is the people that demonstrate blind loyalty to this administration. Why are you demonstrating blind loyalty to this administration at a time when they are literally you, okay? You are not a super wealthy multimillionaire, okay? You're not. You are most likely an average American worker. Öyle mi? That's cute. Oh, he's Turkish. Never mind. Okay, well, you know, your opinion is irrelevant. Enjoy the hyperinflation dipshit, okay? Suck my literally, like, this is, in America, we are Turkifying at an alarming rate, and this Turkish moron is in the chat being like, nah, dude, it's awesome. Are you enjoying what's going on in Turkey?
We know that Senator
Lauren,
Susan
hang on.
Collins.
Let's listen to the Vice President.
Will suspend for a prayer by the Senate.
You know his ass is not in Turkey, but in Germany, most likely. That chatter is also correct. There's very little likelihood that that dude is in Turkey because Turks in the chat already know exactly what America's going through because they went through it in Turkey and they're still going through it in Turkey. It's always the dumb German Turks who are like pro Erdogan, okay? Erdogan writers who are like, oh, dude, shut up. You're overreacting. I don't know what has happened to the German Turks. Not all German Turks, obviously, but some of the German Turks are such hogs. It is incredibly annoying. Also, yeah, when the AfD kicks into power, you will enjoy that remigration. And then you will also get a taste of that Erdogan regime that you voted for consistently. Ananızı sikecek Almanlar. Gönderecekler sizi AfD. Geldiği zaman gönderecekler seni tekrar Türkiye'ye. O zaman göreceksin o oy verdiğin Erdoğan'ın neler yaptığını. Bir yandan overnight yani. Ondan sonra görürsün. Orada kazandığın, Almanya'da kazandığın euro ile gidip Bodrum'da para alabiliyorsun. Nasıl olsa çok güzel. Exchange rate çok iyi senin için şu anda. Bakalım bir Türk lirasıyla çalışmaya başladığın zaman Türkiye'de nasıl hoşuna gidecek mi gitmeyecek mi Erdoğan? Amcık ağızlılar.
Chaplain.
Oh, never mind. Sorry, Lauren.
That's okay.
The prayer is important. It is part of the daily business of the Senate. But as we monitor that, please continue what you were telling us about the news.
Yeah, we know now that Senator Rand Paul voted no on this piece of legislation. Senator Tom Tillis voted no on this piece of legislation. Senator Susan Collins voted no on this piece of legislation. But our colleague Sarah Ferris, who was in the chamber, said that Senator Lisa Murkowski gave a quiet but affirmative vote for this legislation. Obviously, that is a significant development given the lengths that leadership went to try to win over her support. She had several concerns in this bill, from Medicaid to food stamps cuts in her state, and she was really successful in winning some major things for the state of Alaska, including the fact that a key provision that would have shifted some of the burden of covering the cost of the supplemental nutrition.
How are 5150 votes allowed? Because it's a budget reconciliation. I think all of it should be 5150 for the record. Like, I think that technically it would all be 5150. There's a minimum necessary vote. If it wasn't for the filibuster, like a regular majority would be fine to pass most bills if it wasn't for the filibuster. And the filibuster can be voted on to avoid the filibuster. That's why you need a supermajority. That's why you need more than 50 votes. This was a budget reconciliation, so there is no filibuster regardless. This is passing as a budget reconciliation, which is a basic majority bill.
Assistance program known as food stamps back in her state. She was carved out. Alaska was carved out, as was Hawaii. That just shows you how far leadership was working to try to win up and shore up her vote.
And when you say carved out, just to be clear, it means that the cuts that are coming to most states will not come to the state of Alaska and Hawaii as well.
Exactly. Non-contiguous states in the United States will not be subject to that change. We'll see how that goes over among House conservatives once this gets back over to their chamber, of course.
Like, the only hope and a dream we have is the Tea Party being insane and just being such rugged libertarians that they are just like, I don't care. We're not doing any deficit. I'm not voting for it. Okay? Once again, our hope and a dream is on some of the most psychotic in the country, some of the most psychotic representatives in the country. I am praying to my Lord, our Lord and Savior, and also, perhaps more importantly, Hayek, Milton Friedman, Ayn Rand, and the Koch brother that is still alive, and the one that's dead, that the Tea Party pulls through and just nukes this out of orbit once again and causes more instability. That is the only thing I am praying to the Rand Corporation. Please, Donald Trump, save me, okay? I'm telling you, this is the only thing that will maybe potentially stop this from pushing in the House of Representatives is the rabid far-right Tea Party caucus, the Freedom Caucus, as they're known, which is unlikely. I'm still going to pray to all of the gods that they believe, the gods of capitalism, the gods of anarcho-capitalism. Please, please, for the love of and all things holy, whatever the you believe in, okay? Please nuke this. It won't happen. They went along with it last tax bill. I know, but I shouldn't stop dreaming, and you shouldn't either. Think about the deficit, guys. Think about the expenditures. It's so much. It's so much. It doesn't kill the working poor hard enough. Please think about that, because that's the only thing they care about. They love the tax cuts. They hate that there's any expenditures in it. There's so many expenditures. Please, 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 please. I beg of you, Tea Party caucus, please save us. Freedom Caucus, please save us. Why would Murkowski go along with this? What do you mean? Like, these guys all cut side deals for their own state so they can like avoid half the spending cuts in their own states. So then they go along with it. It's that easy. Also, every Republican at the end of the day will vote for stuff like this. This is the whole purpose. The entire purpose of the Republican Party. People talk about the ideological disagreements within the right wing, okay? Within the right flank of American politics. But there's one unifying principle, and that is always tax cuts and deregulation, but especially tax cuts. This is a tax cut bill, first and foremost. Sam Cedar was saying they were promised the Freedom Caucus a budget cutting bill in 2026.
Senator Paul said that that your vote was a bailout for Alaska at the expense of the rest of the country.
It's true. by the way. That is literally what happened.
That's what Senator Paul said.
Which is so crazy because, like, Rand Paul's disagreement with this bill is not my disagreement with this bill. Rand Paul's disagreement with this bill is that there's expenditures in it and it increases the deficit. Okay? So that's what he's mad about. And even though he's mad about that, just like the quote unquote Tea Party movement backed Freedom Caucus is supposed to be quote unquote mad about this, because that's what they're mad about. They're mad that, like, it increases the deficit. How I'm a deficit hawk. How dare you? Okay. Rand Paul is correct when he says you cut a side deal where you eliminated some of the cuts from Alaska and then you over the rest of the country, which is true. Senator, we've got the.
I didn't say it, ma'am. I'm just asking for your response.
My response is I have an obligation to the people of the state of Alaska. And I live up to that every single day. I fight for my state's interests, and I make sure that Alaskans are understood. I work hard to take care of a state that has more unique situations, more unique people, and it's just different. And so
Yeah, you wouldn't understand it. It's Alaskan business. See yourself out. Do you think her knees hurt from all the shoe polishing under Trump's table? I mean, this is expected.
when people suggest that federal dollars go to one of our 50 states in a, quote, bailout, I find that offensive. I advocated for my state's interests. I will continue to do that, and I will make no excuses for doing that. Do I like this bill? No, because I tried to take care of Alaska's interests, but I...
Do I like this bill? No. Will I? Did I inevitably concede? Yes. It's nasty business, man. It is nasty business.
I know that in many parts of the country, there are Americans that are...
I'm going to repeat this one more time, okay? If you are a Trump supporter from a rural area, you will no longer have a hospital, okay? You probably already have a hard time going to whatever hospital that exists in your vicinity, but you're double now because now no more hospitals. If there was no hospitals in a 50-mile region, now there's no hospitals in a 100-mile region. And the ones that remain will unironically be swapped at all times. Okay? It's so cooked. Cutting Medicaid is profoundly stupid. American healthcare already is one of the worst by every metric in comparison to comparable OECD states. American healthcare is unironically worse than much poorer countries that have nationalized systems. And it is going to get even worse now because these rural hospitals where Trump supporters live, in the areas that Trump supporters live, rely heavily on Medicaid. That is the only way that people can pay for it. Okay? Medicaid is the only way that people can pay for health care because these are places that are impoverished. Okay? Very poor people live in these places. So when there's no funding vehicle for these hospitals, when that expenditure is cut, they will no longer be, they won't be operating. They will not be able to operate. It's that simple. Why are Republicans killing their supporters? They don't care. They don't care because Republicans serve capital openly. Okay? What do you mean? They directly assassinated a major chunk of their base of support with boomers. The boomer vote has shifted to the Democratic side. If you noticed in the last couple of elections, like it changed a little bit. And I think the last election, the gains made by boomers wasn't necessarily made on the virtue of like the Democratic Party making a better argument than the Republicans did for the boomers. It's because all the right-wing boomers died. They died. They killed them. But it didn't matter because there's a unlimited amount of stupid people in this country that'll still vote for the Republican Party.
They're not going to be advantaged by this bill. I don't like that. I don't like.
When Mitch McConnell was told about the calls coming in telling him not to cut Medicaid, his response was, they'll get over it. I cannot think. I just like, I can't think of another instance where they're just so transparent about how little they care about the working poor. And a part of the reason why a part of the reason why there is no real momentum behind the Democrats is because the Democrats don't actually convincingly tell a story that they're on the side of the working class. And this is precisely the reason why when the election cycle comes around, the Republican demons get to lie actively to their base of support and even pick up low propensity voters aggressively, because the Democrats are also servile to corporate interests. Sure, Democrats won't pass a package like this. Never. Okay? They would never do that. 100%. This is what I mean when I say, of course, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are different. Okay? Especially when it comes to domestic policies. Okay? But if the Democrats' alternative vision for America is basically a watered down version of this, then obviously people are going to go for the full thing. They're going to go for the full strength soda as opposed to the diet soda. This is why I'm so critical of the Dems, okay? This is why I get so mad about the Democratic Party, because they are not a true opposition party. Because I want them to win so that this doesn't happen.
The fact that we moved through an artificial deadline, an artificial timeline to produce something, to meet a deadline, rather than to actually try to produce the best bill for the country. But when I saw the...
Yeah, 60% of nursing homes' income comes from Medicaid, by the way. They are melting the poor, the working poor, and the old, okay? Once again, they do not care. And this isn't like the dog catches the car moment, because it clearly doesn't matter. It clearly doesn't matter, because if there is no true opposition to this, if there isn't like a united front and a real difference, if there is no one on the other side, if there aren't like 1,000 different Zoran Mamdanis that bloom as a consequence of this devastation, and the Democrats are still operating on the Hakeem Jeffries notion of politics, the Chuck Schumer notion of politics, then Americans are just going to get more and more angry. And in that volatility, as we have seen in the past couple of decades, they become incredibly easy to manipulate. They become more and more angry at like random people. They become scared of their own shadows. Do you not understand? This is what I've been screaming about. This is precisely the reason why simply sitting around and expecting the Americans to come to terms with like this economic devastation is idiotic. It's dangerous. What is Chuck Schumer doing in opposition? News, I just got the name struck off this bill with a move on the floor of the Senate. It's no longer named One Big Beautiful Bill. The bill is big, ugly betrayal of the American people by the Republicans, and the American people will remember
Budget Act of... I raise a point of order against page 1, lines 3 to 5 of the pending amendment, which violates section 313B1A of the Congressional Budget Act of 1974.
The point of order is sustained. The text will be stricken.
He's a bad...
I raise a point of order against page 1, lines 3 to 5 of the pending amendment, which violates section 313B1A of the Congressional Budget Act of 1974.
God, he's so sick. He's so sick, dude. That's my goat right there. Yo, he's the man, bro. Y'all don't understand swag when you see it, dude. Swag is hitting you directly in the face right now, and many of you are not recognizing my goat. My goat. That just happened. That's how I'm gonna be. I've realized that my future career prospects lie with being a Democratic Party mouthpiece. So going forward, this is the type of you can expect from me. That just happened. Chuck Schumer is showing once again real swag. Everybody say thank you, Chuck Schumer. I'm gonna be a Dem faillennial Precisely. Instead of screaming about how horrible this bill is as they should be, they're punching left and on Zoran and actively trying to get Trump, a Trump puppet reelected or get a cop rapist in office. Actual controlled opposition. These be on the air 24/7 telling every single person watching how bad this will be. Explain what just happened with the bill. Chuck Schumer just changed the name of the bill. That's it. It's meaningless. I'm showing that as a way to explain to you that it's stupid. Once again, 50% of individuals over the age of 75 and 2/3 of those over 85 are on Medicaid. 60% of all nursing home residents receive care funded by Medicaid. Long-term nursing home care is funded by Medicaid, okay? These are people who have Medicare, but also in order to get the proper funding for long-term nursing home care, they get Medicaid. What do we do with the old people? Do we just kill them? Do we just melt them? What are they going to do? Also, in incredibly expected news, the Senate Republicans bought Hawley off by including RECA, which he's been trying to get attached to something, anything, for 3 years. While it's true that the RECA will benefit Missourians, the Medicaid cuts will harm them. What's Hawley's plan to reverse them? Who knows? RECA is a generational legislation for Missouri, and I will finally deliver justice for survivors in the St. Louis region. And when this reconciliation bill is signed into law, Missouri will also see new health care funding and big tax cuts for working families. I call on the House to quickly pass the legislation and send it to President Trump's desk. Josh Hawley, remember, Mr. Populist, Mr. Right Populism. Remember how much he talked about how we can't do a single dime. We can't have a single dime cut from Medicaid. We can't have any sort of Medicaid cuts. Dog, you are a senator of one of the poorest states in the nation. Do you know how much your state relies on these social safety nets for survival? Open President, thank you for the 100 gifted subs. Everyone fighting for their own state interests while selling out others will accelerate state succession. Ay, ay, ay. How close is the U.S. to becoming a real-life Hunger Games? I don't know. I mean, this is once again more impactful than 100 9/11s. Okay, this is the Onion joke about Osama bin Laden just kicks back, Al Qaeda just kicks back and watches America collapse in and of itself. This is why I've also said, if you want to truly destroy the country, doing a 9/11 is not the most effective measure. Just fund the Republican Party, the number one terrorist entity on the planet. Number two is the Democrats, for sure, okay? But number one is still the Republicans. If you want to destroy this country, just vote for the Republicans. That's it. If you want to destroy the planet, vote for the Republican Party. Number one terrorist of all time, okay? Number one at terrorism. Number one at melting the working class. Number one at doing giant redistribution policies for the tippy top of American society. It's cool, man. We'll get 1,000 new billionaires in the process, That'll be fine. Breaking. Marjorie Taylor Greene just announced on Steve Bannon's show that Trump's big bill doesn't have enough votes in the House. This is far from over. I can't imagine it passing. Oh, thank God. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Please. I don't believe this, but please be real. Please be real. Please be the truth. Please, Freedom Caucus, save us. Freedom Caucus, save us. For those of you who don't know, Freedom Caucus has saved us in the past. When Barack Obama wanted to do COLA adjustments, cost of living adjustments, that would cut Social Security expenditures, okay? When Barack Obama was willing to do that as a bargain that nobody asked for, the people that tanked it were the Freedom Caucus, okay? The people that tanked it in the House of Representatives were the rabid, super far-right Freedom Caucus weirdos, okay? So say thank you, Freedom Caucus. Thank you, Comrade Taylor Greene. They literally are like, it's not killing enough, it's not melting enough of the working poor, so we will not pass, we will not push for this. And I'll take it. What's their angle? They're insane. That's their angle. Their angle is that they are insane. That's it. Like, they're schizophrenic. That's their angle. One Trump call and they fold. Watch. I know. But I just want to believe. Bro, you sound like Jank right now. Wait, whoa. At no point did I say these people are they're moral or intellectually honest or anything like that. I'm simply telling you what they have done in the past when they felt like expenditures were too high due to their schizophrenic ideological investment in anarcho-capitalist principles. Okay? That is crazy. I didn't say they're actually like, rugged Marxists or something. I'm telling you what they've done in the past. I don't think that they're going to do it right now, but as a joke, I hope that they will. I'm going to keep advocating for them to do so. ICE has more money than the Marines in this bill, but it will allow them to fully wage war on internal enemies, secret police picking up people everywhere, citizen or not. Oh, for sure. That is the major goal. It is a massive funding vehicle for ICE, Trump's Gestapo, Trump's secret police. These guys also love that part of the bill.
We're taking Medicaid away from American citizens and maybe still paying for illegal aliens. Is the House going to rubber stamp this? Is it going to be like a 24-hour turnaround, ma'am?
I cannot imagine. No, I can't imagine they have the vote. There's no way that Johnson has the votes in the House for this. We're supposed to be back Wednesday morning to start voting at 9 a.m. I think that is not realistic. I just don't see how that's possible. So this is, I think it's far from over. It is really a dire situation. We're on a time clock that's been really set on us, so we have a lot of pressure. And then also given the fact that there's 435 members of Congress, and it's hard for us to get to an agreement on anything. So this whole thing is, I don't know what to call it. It's a show. And I'm sorry for saying that. I know we're not supposed to say that on the air, but that's truly what it is.
We're taking a Medicaid away from
nursing home conglomerates, not a strong enough lobbying force. I can't imagine they'll be happy about losing that income, especially with the boomers starting to get ripe. I don't know.
Okay, and Lauren, I just want to show our viewers as we wait to see the final gavel. As you said, we don't know for sure what happens until the final gavel, although this time I think we have a pretty good sense. I just want to show our viewers the big...
By the way, people are talking about, why are people talking about BBB? It's Big Beautiful Bill. It's not the Better Business Bureau, okay? BBB passed. One of the biggest overlooked things I haven't seen many people talk about in regards to grad plus loans being taken away and students, pushing students without rich parents into predatory private loans if they can even get them. I'm pushing towards residency, and this admin is really over the country, exacerbating the physician shortage even with this even more. The BBB is the Big Beautiful Bill, is the name that Trump gave it, okay? Yes, I know Trump is going after Mamdani. We're going to talk about that as well. There's so much in this thing, dude.
Picture of what we're talking about here, the substance of this, because the horse trading and the politics are fascinating, but the substance is really ultimately what matters. We're talking about extending the 2017 tax cuts, overhaul eligibility for Medicaid and food stamps, no taxes on tips or overtime. That was a big campaign promise that President Trump was out there talking.
Chat, ICE is getting, with this bill, ICE is getting direct appropriations to the tune of $30 billion with a B, okay? $30 billion. On top of that, with the additional expenditures to all Customs and Border Patrol, okay, whether it be state expenditures, whether it be detention expenditures, or whether it be additional funding for immigration courts and immigration detention centers, the total number goes up to $175 billion. Okay? With the new appropriations for Customs and Border Protection, CBP, immigration courts, detention expansion, and state-level border assistance, the bill and its immigration enforcement budget totals $175.155 billion with a B, okay? With a B. Please understand how psychotic this is. The budget will give, once again, $175 billion to immigration enforcement broadly. Is Israel getting any money from BBB? Come on, dog. Of course, Israel. We have to carve out something for Israel. Come on. Nice piece of steak. This puts CBP, Customs and Border Patrol, and American Immigration Enforcement, okay, at a higher budget than, I think, virtually every other country's military. This makes it the most expensive law enforcement apparatus on the planet. This makes it like this is more than the GDP of nation states. One must ask the question why this much funding is necessary. Because the real story here, yeah, China is around 250 billion. Okay, calm down. Like, yes, of course. China is also multiple times larger than the United States of America. It would make ICE the 8th largest military by expenditure on Earth, ahead of France. To put that number into context, Bernie's free college costs around $70 to $90 billion a year. Free college tuition. This is genocidal level funding. The reason why they're doing this, you have to understand, the reason why they're doing this is because they are gearing up for ethnic cleansing, okay, internally. That is the point. The major hurdle, as I have said time and time again, for ICE deportations, like mass deportations like the ones that we've seen so far, which at a very limited capacity, even though it's still harrowing, it's still awful, was the major hurdle against that was literally not the lack of ambition, but instead logistics. There isn't enough places to put, enough concentration camps to put the people that are being grabbed and detained. And this will not stay. Just like I said, there is no world where they're like grabbing all undocumented migrants that are criminals or whatever, because there aren't that many criminal migrants in this country, right? Because the criminal migrants that do heinous crimes, they get prosecuted and they go to prison. Like the notion that, oh, if you're undocumented and you do a crime, you get away with it. Like that's made up. Trump has lied about that over and over and over again. So I told you that they were going to go after regular migrant workers that have the proper authorization to work on U.S. soil right now, and they have been. They've been going after migrants that have been checking in with ICE, that ICE knows exactly where they live, ICE knows exactly where they work. They've been going after as many people as they possibly can because they want to make a show of force. But a big part of the issue here is simply the lack of funding. They don't have enough people to do mass apprehensions all around the country. They do not have enough facilities to place people into after doing mass apprehensions all across the country. And now this bill creates a funding vehicle to do that. Watch this space. It is one of the most important parts of the right-wing reactionary fascist agenda. Everything is funneled through immigration enforcement for them because it is the one area that the executive office has more authority over. So if you use immigration enforcement as the driving vehicle of your internal military, your secret police force, you can get away with a lot more unconstitutional while still simultaneously eroding what remains of constitutional protections to begin with. And eventually, they are going to go after political dissidents as well. First, they're going to go after every single undocumented migrant that whose immigration status has been in limbo. Then they'll go after DACA. Then they will start denaturalizing people. First, if you've been naturalized as a citizen in the past 5 years, you're probably first to go, right? Then 10 years. Then eventually they will call into question any American citizen's citizenship status and inevitably move on to natural-born U.S. citizens as well. If this does not stop, that is where it will go. And it won't be because these people are, heinous criminals or whatever, even though that is what the Trump administration will keep saying over and over again. It will be because all of these people will be considered political dissidents, a danger, a threat to American national security. A lot of people look at the aftermath of Nazi Germany's violence and they go, oh, well, you can't compare this to the Holocaust. Like, what are you talking about? Not realizing that the denaturalization process was legal in Nazi Germany, okay? The remigration process and the removal of people's citizenship was a part of this, and the messaging was exactly the same. Trump's budget just passed the Senate, braced for a massive increase in ICE raids. The budget gives $175 million to immigration enforcement. The orders of magnitude are going to be multiplied, immigration experts say. Mass immigration enforcers have swept through American cities in the months since President Donald Trump took office, using flashbangs during restaurant sweeps, slamming people's heads into the ground, violently arresting gardeners on video. Oh, did I say million? Sorry, 175 billion with a B. Apologies. 175 billion with a B. Why isn't it working? Okay. 10 charts to explain Trump's big, beautiful bill. This is the distance in each direction from Alligator Alcatraz to a hospital capable of doing anything beyond stitches and a Tylenol. Holy how is that even possible? Oh, it's like right here, smack dab in the middle. So it's either 155 kilometers or 50 kilometers to Hialeah. This is going to be a death camp, okay? This is going to be an immigrant detention center that will be remembered as like the American Auschwitz, I think. It's basically tents in the middle of a Florida summer. Benny Johnson is flexing like it's a fantastic thing. I don't think anybody realizes how impressive Alligator Alcatraz is. The state of Florida built this 3,000-bed federal prison in 8 days. The director tells me it could have been done in 72 hours were it not for some regulatory holdups. Now all the state needs is DOJ approval to deputize the National Guard as deportation judges, and this will become the most efficient deportation center in American history. One hurricane, and they're all dead if they don't get eaten by the alligators. Okay? You understand that, right? The president says he's looking into spending federal money in part to put sharks in the San Francisco Bay. What? Oh, it's all aesthetics for these losers. Anyway, let's get back to the CNN reporting.
Then, even Kamala Harris did as well. Phasing out green energy tax credits, money for the Pentagon, border security, detentions, and deportations. A lot of money there. And it also lifts the debt ceiling. Can we just talk a little bit about, as we look at all of the components to this, the no's weren't that many no's, considering the concerns that we heard from a lot of Republican senators about a lot of what's in this when it comes to the Medicaid reform or cuts, when it comes to the fact that the CBO says it adds like $3 trillion to the deficit. But at the end of the day, unless somebody changes their vote before it's finally gavelled, it was just, as you said, Rand Paul and Tom Tillis, who went out with a blaze of glory. He was so upset about this. He said, I'm not going to run for re-election.
Yeah, and Dana, I just want to interrupt to say they have gavelled this vote now. It happened very quickly, but I want to just point out, as you were saying, you have these 3 Republicans who voted against this bill, and one of them voting against it for very different reasons, right, than the other 2. Senator Tom Tillis, Senator Susan Collins, they had concerns about those Medicaid cuts. And we should note that in the very end of this bill, the negotiations led to a place where Susan Collins nearly doubled that rural hospital fund that she had been fighting for. Still, it was not enough to win her vote. Meanwhile, Senator Rand Paul voted against this bill because there was too much spending, he argued, and the fact that it increased the country's borrowing limit. That was something he did not want to include in this legislation. And he was very clear with leadership from the jump that that was going to be a red line for him. Obviously, they decided that they didn't need his vote, that they could get votes elsewhere. But that is why those 3 members voted against this legislation. We do expect that Senator Susan Collins will issue a more formal statement explaining her vote anytime. We should also note she is now, of those 3, the only Republican that we know of who is seeking re-election in the state of Maine. That obviously could have been Tom Tillis as well, but he announced on Sunday that he was not going to seek re-election after he faced massive backlash from the president when he voted against advancing this piece of legislation.
Really, really interesting. Lauren, thank you so much for being there. Thank you for making clear that this has officially passed. We did miss that quiet gavel by the vice president, who is the president of the Senate, who made sure that it passed by 1 vote, thanks to his tie-breaking vote. Let us know if you see and hear anything that is noteworthy as we learn what else happened on the floor. And my panel is back. Jeff Zeleny, I interrupted you as we got the news. The big picture here about the Trump agenda.
Look, it's an extraordinary piece of legislation, some 980 pages in the Senate. We should point out this is not done yet. However, it is getting to that point. There is momentum behind this bill now. President Trump obviously wants it. So House conservatives now have a decision to make. Are they going to be the fiscal hawks that they've long talked about, or are they going to swallow hard and vote for this bill? My guess is that by the end of the week, there is a bill. Is it going to be a straight line to that point? No, it is not. But we cannot really underestimate how sweeping this legislation is. It reminds me.
Once again, Trump is going after American citizens next. It's not going to stay with just non-citizens. Okay, here
I'd like
it
to
is.
say, a little controversial, but I couldn't care less. We have a lot of bad criminals that came into this country, and they came in stupidly. It was an unforced error. It was an incompetent president that allowed it to happen. It was an auto pen maybe that allowed it to happen, and it did happen. But we also have a lot of bad people that have been here for a long time. People that whack people over the head with a baseball bat from behind when they're not looking and kill them. People that knife you when you're walking down the street. They're not new to our country. They're old to our country. Many of them were born in our country. I think we ought to get them the hell out of here too. You want to know the truth. So maybe that'll be the next.
This is, I need you to understand something, okay? Once this is implemented, it's over, okay? Like every single step being taken in this direction is not because there is a real need or a necessity for this kind of step being taken. It's for a larger project, okay? And the larger project is identical to what the Nazis did, okay? The larger project is identical to what the Nazis did. Eventually, taking away the citizenship status and making American citizens stateless, okay? Obviously, you start off by claiming you're going after criminals. And a lot of Americans have no interest in thinking about this and assuming that this is like an unreasonable step. They will go along with it. They will say, oh, yeah, well, what? You want rapists to stay in the country? Not realizing that once you can denaturalize American nationals, American citizens, it will not stay with criminals. This is also, obviously ridiculous to do to American criminals to begin with, but it is a logical conclusion to reactionary ideology, because if you think the only solution to crime is more and more severe deterrence measures, more and more severe penalties, then yeah, of course you're going to take away people's citizenship. What do you mean? You should kill them, right? Like that's the whole point. Brother, you're projecting, bro. Is this manipulation? Do you not hear what his words are? You are literally listening, instead of listening to my warnings, you are looking at this unprecedented and unconstitutional move, and you're saying exactly what I'm saying. Well, people will say in defense of this. Why would you ever believe what Trump has said? He said that they were going to target rapist, murderer, drug dealer criminals, and they haven't done that because all of the rapist, drug dealer, murderer criminals have already been targeted in every single administration prior to the Trump administration. They're already in the prison system, which is why they're going after regular people at the job sites, okay? People that have the proper authorization to be on U.S. soil, but their immigration status is constantly kept in a state of limbo. What happened there? Do you think it's drug dealer, rapist, murderers that are working at the car wash, at the local car wash? Is that what you think is going on? No. So Trump actually lied about that, I guess. And in the process, the administration is going after people who already have legal status to be in the country too. What is your answer to this? There's a literal DOJ memo that says that they are going to denaturalize anchor babies based on anti-Semitism or support for foreign terror groups. It seems a little pointed. Wait, what? President Trump issued Executive Order 14188, additional measures to combat anti-Semitism, which established a policy of the United States to content. Wait, what? The Department of Justice may institute civil proceedings to revoke a person's United States citizenship if an individual either illegally procured naturalization or procured naturalization by concealment of material fact. No, that's just that's for people who became naturalized U.S. citizens. The benefits of civil denaturalization include the government's ability to revoke the citizenship of individuals who engage in the commission of war crimes, extrajudicial killings, or other serious human rights abuses, to remove naturalized criminals, gang members, or indeed any individuals convicted of crimes who pose an ongoing threat to the United States, and to prevent convicted terrorists from returning to U.S. soil, traveling internationally on a U.S. passport. At a fundamental level, it also supports the overall integrity of the naturalization program by ensuring that those who unlawfully procured citizenship, including those who obtained it through fraud or concealment of material information, do not benefit. They've done this never at this rate. They'll always like try to find some like random nonsensical reason to be like, oh, you lied and didn't provide all materially important pieces of information in your naturalization process. They've done this in the past as well. I've pointed to them in the past. The Civil Division shall prioritize and maximally pursue denaturalization proceedings in all cases permitted by law and supported by evidence. Cases against individuals who pose a potential danger to national security, including those with nexus to terrorism, espionage, or unlawful export from the United States of sensitive goods, technology, or information. Case against individuals who engage in torture. What to know about DOJ revoking citizenship of naturalized Americans. Do you ever get sad about how your peers don't feel the urgency you and your community feels about this? I get more sad about the fact that many Americans are sleepwalking as we are moving in the direction of full tilt fascism.
Next job that we'll work on together. But I think getting them out, we forget about them. We had some bad accidents in New York, and they're not accidents. I like to say, little.
Of something as big as the
I'm not a naturalized citizen. I'm a natural-born U.S. citizen.
Care Act that we all covered 15 years ago now. And the political consequences could also be similar. I've spent some time out in the country talking to voters and rural hospital providers and others, and they are really worried still about these Medicaid cuts. And here's just one reason why. It sort of sounds arcane, but someone with Medicaid now who relies on it to take care of a child with disabilities has to now apply, if this passes, twice in a year for eligibility, as opposed to just once. One mother I talked to said she waited on the phone 3 months to get her daughter certified. Not on the phone for that long, but she was on the phone, and it took 3 months to get her certified. So the question is, can these states administer what Congress is about to pass on to them? So the Senate right now is going to basically jam this down the House's throat. We've seen that many times before. But after that, red states and blue states are about to get a huge piece of legislation that they're going to have to deal with. And there are many Republican governors as well who are very concerned about how this will happen.
So let's just stay on the Medicaid portion of this, because when it comes to the policy, but also the politics, as you just described, it's perhaps the most potent part of this very, very, very big bill. Let's listen to what the president himself said when asked about his promise that it's, quote, waste, fraud, and abuse only.
Medicaid is in big trouble with the Democrats.
So you promise anyone who loses their health care coverage that is because of...
With the Democrats, you just cooked Medicaid. You literally just cooked Medicaid. You said you were never going to cut Medicaid, and you lied. We all knew that he was lying about this anyway.
Waste, fraud, and abuse.
Only waste, fraud, and abuse, which is what everybody wants.
And Olivia, the Congressional Budget Office, which I know some conservatives dismiss it, but it is the best.
That's crazy. Yeah. The Congressional Budget Office.
Thing we've got in terms of a real look at the nuts and bolts of what these pieces of legislation will do. That's true for Democratic Congresses and presidents and Republicans. They say that this bill, 11.8 million people will lose health insurance by 2034. And that is because when we say health insurance, those are the people who get their health insurance through Medicaid.
Yep. And this issue has been so politically charged from the beginning.
Numbers larger than that. I think it's 17 million. Did the bill fully pass? Pretty big delay in chat. What are you guys talking about? What F? There's no F on my end. There's no F on most people's end. All right, we're going to test out. We're going to test out the delay. Type this number that I'm holding up right now when you see it. Okay, there's like a 3-second delay. I don't know, just refresh. Okay, it's fine.
Trump and other Republicans can definitely use a wide description of what they consider under the umbrella of waste, fraud, and abuse. But you heard centrists complaining about it. They think, okay, if we do work requirements, if we do a few of these other changes in what they call guardrails, we can argue back home that this will be okay. But there is definitely some concern, and it's growing. You were seeing the Democratic ads that are building and attacking Republicans who even voted to just get out of the House, get it out of the Senate. And this will be what we're seeing playing out in the midterms as one of the biggest issues that Democrats campaign on. We will see if Republicans, some of the centrists, David Valadao and others, vote to back it in the House now that they're seeing what they complain is steeper cuts to it in the Senate version. Speaker Johnson barely got it through by just one vote some weeks ago with Republicans by pulling together the two different factions.
But the pressure is quite different when it's just the bill and then you're in between the bill and what the president wants more than anything legislatively becoming law.
Welcome back to CBS News 24/7. All right, so you are looking live at President Donald Trump right there. It might not appear as such on the map, but he's calling this place in South Florida, the ICE detention facility, Alligator Alcatraz. He is down there.
It's not Alligator Alcatraz, it's Alligator Auschwitz.
To talk about that detention facility amidst quite a bit of controversy, but...
Can you explain why Democrats passed this shit on foreign? Democrats didn't pass it. It passed in the Senate with all Republican support. It initially in the House, did it get any Democrat support in the House? I think like maybe a couple, but this is in the Senate. It did not need Democrat votes to pass in the Senate. It just needed a majority.
But while he addresses the media at this roundtable, he also spoke about current breaking news, and that is the fact that the Senate passed his so-called big, beautiful bill. Here's what he had to say.
I just heard that about the Senate, and the bill just passed, and it tells you there's something for everyone. I mean, it's a great bill. There is something for everyone, and I think it's going to go very nicely in the House. Actually, I think it will be easier in the House than it was in the Senate.
And just to be clear on the Medicaid cuts, you've promised not to cut Medicaid, said this is all just targeting waste, fraud, and abuse. Are you saying that the estimated 11.8 million people who could lose their health coverage, that is all waste, fraud, and abuse?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's going to be a very much smaller number than that, and that number will be waste, fraud, and abuse. And if you look, they took a much more liberal stance on the
51-50, 3 Republicans voted no. Vance was the deciding vote. I have such a big headache. I have to grab a pill real quick.
Medicaid situation than they could have. They had a tough stance and a weak stance. They took not a very strong stance on that to start off, and it's waste, fraud, and abuse, and everybody wants that covered.
What number is that? What analysis are you seeing?
I'm not seeing a number, but I know it's much less than the number you gave, and we really were very, very cognizant of three things. Social Security, we're going to take care of it beautifully. Medicare and Medicaid, and we are going to save it, whereas the Democrats are going to, you won't have it. They will destroy Medicare and Medicaid, and they have to because their numbers don't work. So it's not going to happen. They're the ones that have destroyed Medicare. They have made it so bad already, they're going to make it a lot worse, but now we'll be in charge, so we're going to have no problem with Medicaid or Medicare or Social Security. Thank you. Yeah.
Claire Galt with Wink News in Fort Myers. What is your direction to ICE when it comes to arresting farm workers here illegally, other workers in industries that are pretty critical to Florida's economy?
Yeah. Well, we're very much cognizant of that. And as you know, I won the farmers by 92%, and I'm not going to be abandoning my farmers. We were strong on the borders, but we're also strong for the farmers and for others in the hotel industry, et cetera. You know, we have
in the House vote, all Dems voted against, 2 Republicans voted against, 1 rep voted present, 2 reps didn't vote. Notably, one of those 2 is the guy who fell asleep on the House floor and missed the vote. When he says he's going to help out the farmers, he's also lying once again, because mass deportation means eviscerating a big chunk of the labor in the farms. A big chunk of the labor in the hospitality business, a big chunk of the labor in the restaurant business, a big chunk of the labor in the construction business. When he says he's going to help out farms, he means the farm owners, but even then, those are the people who are pushing back against these kinds of mass deportation policies. A lot of people don't understand that Texas, back in the day, used to have literal gangs that would hunt down marshals that were trying to implement Operation, I won't say the word. In the aftermath of the Bracero program, which Donald Trump actually kept repeating over and over again as a fantastic thing that he is going to implement here in the United States of America once again, Texas ranchers would literally roam the streets with guns to kill marshals. And the reason why they were doing that is because they did not want their farmhands to be deported. Okay? I don't know if it'll get to that level, but I think the same principle exists. Do you just eat all the slop anytime it's served? Yeah, but that's not now. A farmhand? I know John Oliver did a piece on the bill. We'll cover that as well. This is before it passed.
Similar situations. And Christy and I, we'll be working with Ron and a lot of the states. We're going to work something where the farmers can be responsible for some of the people that have been. They have people around for 10, 15 years that they know very well. We're going to put them responsible and we're going to issue a form of a card or document, and the farmer's going to be responsible for these people. They're not going to have citizenship, but they'll be working, they'll be paying taxes. We need to get our farmers the people they need. Otherwise, our farmers aren't going to be able to do their land. You know,
so exactly how it works currently, except I guess like legalizing slavery, indentured servitude. Yeah, I guess that's I mean that is what's going on currently. The ongoing migrant worker structure that exists in this country is two-tiered. You have one, documented migrant workers that work for very low pay in horrible conditions to begin with, okay? And they work through, they're seasonal workers. They come into the country, they work in the agribusiness, and then they leave, okay? But on top of that, we have already another tier that is even worse than that, which is the undocumented workers that have authorization, are waiting to are waiting for their paperwork to come in, and it never comes in, obviously, or people who are not even waiting for their paperwork to come in. They just came in illegally and have been working in these farms for years and years and years. The reason why they are kept undocumented is exactly, you're not wrong, the Dubai method. Basically, it is identical to the way in which the kafala system works in Gulf countries. You know how we talk about, like, in Gulf countries, these governments will take away people's passports and make them work in these horrible conditions. It's basically the same, okay? It's a different version of the kafala system in the United States of America, where we refuse to give proper clearance and authorization, or refuse to give full-blown citizenship, full-blown documentation to a lot of these people, so we can actually use and abuse them, and they can be easily discarded through the legal process. Trump himself is, of course, as a major business owner, utilized this structure as well. And that's precisely what's going on here. He's basically saying, we're going to keep some of these slaves in the farms that are undocumented. We're not going to give them citizenship, God forbid. Couldn't do that.
Tried once before, many, many years ago, where there was a very strong guy, and he got everybody out, and every farm almost in the country, but every farm in California, every farm in Iowa, almost all the farms went bankrupt. They had nobody to work, and we don't want to have that situation. So we're going to work it. We're going to put our farmers and others in charge of the people that they have under them. They know the people, and I think it's going to work out really well. We're going to take care of our farmer, but we're going to get the criminals out. Okay?
He's talking about Eisenhower, by the way. He's literally talking about Eisenhower. The very strong guy that he's talking about, he has openly said is tailored off of Eisenhower's Operation Wetback. Okay? That's what this is. And he openly said it on the campaign trail over and over again. Operation W-Back was an immigration law enforcement initiative under President Dwight Eisenhower, created by Joseph Swing, a retired United States Army Lieutenant General and head of the United States Immigration and Nationalization Service. The program was implemented in June 1954 by U.S. Attorney General Herbert Brownell. The short-lived operation used military-style tactics to remove Mexican immigrants, some of them American citizens. It's the name of the program. I know it's a slur, chatters. It's literally the name of the program. The short-lived operation used military-style tactics to remove Mexican immigrants, some of them American citizens, from the United States. Though millions of Mexicans had legally entered the country through joint immigration programs in the first half of the 20th century, with some being naturalized citizens and some once native, Operation Wetback was designed to send them to Mexico. The program became a contentious issue in Mexico-United States relations, even though it originated in a request by the Mexican government to stop the illegal entry of Mexican laborers into the United States. Legal entry of Mexican workers for employment was at the time controlled by the Bracero program, established during World War II. A former version of this existed in World War I as well, a limited version of the Bracero program. By an agreement between the U.S. and Mexican governments, Operation Wetback is primarily a response to a pressure from a broad coalition of farmers and business interests concerned with the effects of illegal immigration from Mexico. Upon implementation, it gave rise to arrests and deportations by U.S. Border Patrol. During World War II, there was need for people to work in the agribusiness. A lot of the young men were busy fighting in World War II. And in an effort to keep the American agribusiness going, they utilized the Bracero program, or they had implemented the Bracero program before as well. And this is the second implementation, 1943 to 1964. During World War II, Mexican and American governments developed an agreement known as the Bracero program, which allowed Mexican laborers to work in the United States under short-term contracts in exchange for stricter border security and the return of illegal Mexican immigrants to Mexico. Instead of providing military support for the U.S. and its military allies, Mexico would provide laborers for the U.S. with the understanding that border security and illegal labor restrictions would be tightened by the United States. The United States agreed based upon a strong need for cheap labor to support its agricultural business. The first implementation of the Bracero program was before 1942. This is the second implementation of the Bracero program, technically. Aviva Chomsky details this in her book that is very instructive. I forget the name of the book right now. Noam Chomsky, one of Noam Chomsky's daughters, Aviva Chomsky, wrote extensively on the process of how laborers have been kept undocumented in an effort for capital owners to develop super profits. Undocumented, how immigration became illegal. It's the name of the book. The program began September 27, 1942, when the first Braceros were admitted into the United States under this agreement with Mexico. The program called for Braceros to be guaranteed wages, housing, food, and exemption from military service. However, even though this was an agreement promised by the United States, conditions were imposed by Mexico that only healthy young men with agricultural experience who could show a permission letter stating they were not needed in Mexico were eligible, and workers who did not fit this requirement were denied paperwork to work in America. The Bracero program would not have a consistent implementation or direction during its 22-year duration. The program itself can be classified into three main phases. The first, between 1942 and 1946, saw heavy input from the Mexican government. The second phase was between 1947 and 54, where the policy shifted from mass legalization of illegal immigrants to mass repatriation of said immigrants. The El Paso incident, see slightly below, would begin discussion of establishing a labor pool versus dealing with the illegal invasion of these immigrants. In certain cases, undocumented workers found by INS agents would be legalized as braceros instead of deported. The final phase lasted from 55 to 64 and thus saw the end of the Bracero program. The paradoxical nature of wanting a source of labor in the form of Mexican immigrants, but the distaste for the immigrants by the population would persist in the United States. Border control leading up to Operation Wetback in 1943, more United States Border Control officers were posted along Mexico's northern border. Pressure from well-connected Mexican land and farm owners frustrated with the Bracero program prompted the Mexican government to call a meeting in Mexico City with four agencies of the United States government: Department of Justice, Department of State, the INS, and Border Patrol. At its peak, the Bracero program allotted around 309,000 contracts to Mexican laborers. What followed was a series of repatriations under the name Operation Wetback. Similar repatriations could be seen during the Great Depression. Okay? Donald Trump kept repeating this over and over again on the campaign trail. During the election cycle, he kept saying, I'm going to do what Eisenhower did. I'm going to do what Eisenhower did. I kept repeating this over and over again. INS, by the way, is the early version of Customs and Border Patrol before the Department of Homeland Security. Before 9/11, it was called the INS. Okay? He kept praising Eisenhower's Operation Wetback over and over again without saying the name. Okay? For understandable reasons. Even Trump he wouldn't say the name. Partially because if you were to say the name openly, then people would be able to research it and figure it out for themselves, and how psychotic this was. Okay? That is the reason, not because he's like worried about how racist this looks, just so you know. After all, he's quite literally saying he's going to do this. Obviously, the real racist implementation of this is the fact that he wants to do mass deportations of all people working on U.S. soil. That is the real racism, not like calling it Operation Wetback or not. Okay? Lock the in. You could call it Operation Puppies, and it still would be an immensely brutal policy. The real reason why he didn't say the words is so that people can't Google it and even learn about this part of American history that many of you probably didn't know about prior to joining this broadcast, even though I have mentioned it over and over again, and you probably haven't heard it before. Streisand effect is in full operation right now. Wow, the White House and DHS screaming about this app has caused it to rocket up to being the top social networking app on the iOS app. It's called IceBlock. IceBlock, which allows users to alert others to the geographical location of ICE officers, is the top social networking app in the App Store right now after Caroline Leavitt condemned it from the podium yesterday. It's now number 3 on the top charts. It'd be a real shame if everyone were to download IceBlock to report the locations of suspected ICE officers. Love Island USA? Why the is that the number 2? I don't know if it's a honeypot or not. Finding that app in your download history will use to deport you next. Here's the clip.
When I saw what was happening in this country, I wanted to do something to fight back.
Joshua Aaron developed IceBlock. It's a free, crowdsourced app that alerts users when immigration and customs enforcement agents are spotted within a 5-mile radius of their location.
So imagine if you're walking down the street and a notification comes up on your device that says ICE has been spotted 4 blocks ahead. Instead of continuing down that path, you can turn left or turn around and avoid the situation altogether.
I'm looking at LA now. I'm seeing one in East Hollywood. And then as I zoom out, it's showing me a few others.
One of the core principles of the design of this app is 100% anonymity for our user base. But there is no sign-up process. There is no user data collected. There's no user data even captured by our app. The app was designed to inform, not obstruct. It's important to remind people that let's report the sightings, let's get people away from those areas so they can protect themselves and their communities, but let's not obstruct what's happening right now.
I mean, my app store doesn't have it. What gives? I'm sure that they'll take it down. They'll probably, all of these tech fascists are completely in line with the government. They will do their bidding. Yeah.
You know,
Trump is calling for American citizens, American nationals with birthright citizenship to also be deported. I already talked about it. We have a lot of bad people that have been here for a long time. Many of them were born in our country. I think we ought to get them the hell out of here too, if you want to know the truth. So maybe that'll be the next job. A lot of things are in motion, and obviously Trump and Elon are arguing over one another. But let's take a look at the details of this big, beautiful bill real quick.
Which concerns
He's political suicide? No, dude, stop. Don't do this. The whole political suicide is okay. It's only political suicide if you extend this process as much as you possibly can and constantly rail against what the Republicans are doing. 48% of Americans as of yesterday did not know what the one big beautiful bill was, and only 8% had heard about the Medicaid cuts. Okay? That is a major crisis for the Democratic Party because of their lack of interest in calling to question this administration doing all of this. As I've talked about with David Day and repeated over and over again, a big part of why Obamacare was received as unfavorable, despite the fact that everybody loves the provisions in it, is because of how long the process of passing Obamacare took. And while that lengthy back and forth was happening, Republicans went on national television every day and lied, aggressively lied about how Obamacare had death panels in it, that it was going to actually end up killing Republican boomers. They lied every day, and they did so specifically because they did not want one of the main provisions in Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, to go through, which was to force every healthcare insurance provider in this country to no longer deny health care coverage to people with pre-existing conditions. People with pre-existing conditions in this country before the ACA could not get health care. It is such an insane reality that many Americans now don't believe it. Republicans don't believe that people with pre-existing conditions would not be able to get health care back in the day before the ACA. You know how insane that is? It is such a ruthless, such a cruel structure that existed in this country that people literally don't believe that it used to be the way of the land. Do you understand? And the Republicans actively petitioned against this. They said it was slavery. You were forcing these insurance providers to take these costly patients, that it was going to collapse the entire insurance industry. They lied about it aggressively on television. And in the process, because it was such a long back and forth, with Democrats giving concessions to the Republicans, even though not a single Republican ever voted for the ACA, when the Democrats did have a supermajority for a short period of time, but of course did not whip enough votes to pass this, even though they didn't just have a majority, they had a supermajority. Democrats used to have a supermajority, not just a simple majority, a supermajority. And then a Democratic senator died and Joe Lieberman took his place, and Joe Lieberman was the famous spoiler of the ACA. Yes, all of this extended the process of gridlock. Americans hate gridlock. If you pass bills expeditiously in the middle of the night without actually receiving any sort of feedback on said bills, Americans will get and they won't realize that they're getting this did not happen with the ACA. The expeditious process, however, happened with the original Trump tax cuts. They literally rammed that through. They rammed that through. That's the reason why so many people did not realize what was happening. And they're doing that once again. They're passing it as quickly as possible so that Americans don't catch up to what is taking. I'm not going to respond to this again like I did last time, because remember last time I responded to this exact same clip, I got banned saying if the Republicans actually cared about Medicare fraud. Last time I responded to this, I got banned. So I'm going to keep mine. As we talked about with David Dane yesterday, this was implemented in Arkansas and it failed, okay? It was a disastrous failure. It's just simply additional paperwork to shut people out, jam them up with paperwork and shut people out from actually getting these necessary life-saving social safety nets. That's all this does.
If they say no, you say, well, I'm taking your insurance away. That's not an unreasonable.
This is in Georgia as well. Yeah. In Georgia, they tried to do this, and all it did was like kick people off their coverage. And these people, they basically created work requirements. And if you couldn't get like a real job, then you could do community service. And it didn't happen. Medicaid programs in each state. Some people don't see Medicaid in the name and think it's something different. Denali Care, Alabama Care, Arizona Health Care Cost Containment System, Healthcare, Medi-Cal in California, Health First Colorado, Husky Health, Healthy Families, Diamond State Health Plan, plus statewide Medicaid managed care program, Georgia Medicaid, MedQuest. Each individual state has a different name for it. After they took on Medicaid expansion, you are finished. What? Why? I'm stupid. Move on. Okay. It's pretty crazy because, like, as I've described already, American social safety nets are like last resort. Like, without them, people just die. It's pretty wild to consider, but there is no, I mean, this is like limited in comparison to other countries to begin with. It's incredibly limited. And we're taking away the scraps. Purpose of this work requirements are not actually to improve the number, to increase the number of people working. It doesn't work that way. It is simply to cut the program. They just put additional paperwork in front of you, just like there is no real reason to do any sort of ban on third trimester abortions. Okay, because third trimester abortions are only being done, because it's such an invasive procedure, they're only being done with a with a medical necessity. So when Republicans go, oh, we got to start, restricting women's access to abortions because they're having third trimester abortions, is no one is having a third trimester abortion for fun. Okay? No one. The only reason why they're doing it is because they want to expand the permission structure, or even all of the voter ID laws. Okay? In this country, we do not have, our elections are immensely secure. We still use paper ballots for the most part. Okay? There has never been a significant number of undocumented migrants like voting. Okay? In this country, we have a problem with people not participating in the elections. It's not we have too many people voting, we have too little people voting. Okay? There is not a single study that shows, the most comprehensive study put together by the Heritage Foundation showed that over the course of numerous election cycles, with a total number of like billions of votes being cast, they found 1,200 cases of voter fraud, which, by the way, weren't all Democrats either. It's like a less than 0.001%. Okay? It's not a real issue. Republicans love to present not a real issue as the biggest issue, and then use that as an opportunity, once they're done propagandizing, use that as an opportunity to create solutions. But because there's no real problem, the solution actually is to create additional paperwork or create additional restrictions. It's the same with abortion. It's the same with like trans people participating in athletic endeavors. It's the same with voter fraud. It's the same with immigration constituting a national security threat. None of the things that I just mentioned are real problems in this country. Not a single thing that I mentioned is a real problem. But if you ask Republicans, they think this is the most significant problem. They create a fake issue and create hysteria surrounding this fake issue, and then they advocate for solutions that are an absolute necessity, because when enough of the public gets whipped up in a frenzy over these fake issues that are not real problems at all, they then turn around and implement whatever kind of fascist mechanism of control, whether it be to take away women's bodily autonomy, like with the abortions, or whether it's to find a new vulnerable population to punish for no reason whatsoever, to make it seem like you're actually working in the direction of offering people things that they demanded, like with the 49 trans athletes that are no longer eligible to compete in the NCAA. 49. Insane. Or whether it be the mass deportation policies implemented specifically to advance a white nativist anti-immigrant agenda to make the country more white. That's it. All the while, they push massive deregulation and massive tax cuts. They gut social safety. Remember, it's never... the marketing on stuff like this is never actually, melt the poor, right? Like, the Republicans will never be honest about their actual intention, right? It always masquerades as something that is more permissible, something that is more positive, right? Georgia pathways the coverage. Who doesn't want additional pathways to coverage? Ironically enough, it is actually shutting off pathways to coverage. Just like the pro-natalist, pro-making women carry pregnancies to term, the anti-women's bodily autonomy movement is not known as that, but it's actually known as what? Pro-life. There is nothing about these Christians that are actually pro-life at all, right? But of course, they don't present themselves as such. They present themselves as pro-life. That's a positive marketing spin associated with the movement. They're not pro-life. They're pro-forced birth, okay? Which is precisely the reason why I always tell people not to get swept away with these marketing terms. Not only do they effectively market their movement as a positive one by doing stuff like this, but they also will work tirelessly to reframe opposing movements in a negative fashion. Part of the reason why this happens more frequently on the right in a more successful way versus the left is because all of these initiatives are created inside of think tanks. Okay. For the right, it's not like a real aspiring grassroots movement that demands that Georgians get kicked off of their healthcare coverage, their government funded healthcare coverage. There is no Georgian that is roaming the streets saying, I want less healthcare. I want the working poor to suffer more. That is precisely why this is a marketed, astroturfed initiative. Whereas on the left, on the Democratic Party's base of support, most of the initiatives are grassroots, which is why they don't come up with the most marketable terms for it. Democrats are supposed to lead, or rather follow the whims and the demands of its base of support, which they don't do. This is precisely the reason why when a decentralized movement comes together and creates a sentiment around something like, can we please fund social safety nets, which are the major reason why crime persists in underserved neighborhoods, they call that defund the police. And then instead of adopting that and then explaining to every single person that listens, the Democratic Party, instead of explaining to every single person that listens that defund the police doesn't literally mean like, you know, abolishing the police or whatever. It actually just means that these are incredibly costly, militarized, unaccountable weirdos in every state, in every city, in every locality. That is the most costly part of every single local form of governance, and that there needs to be a restructuring of these funds. Instead of doing that and explaining what that means, Democrats stand in opposition towards that kind of momentum. Same with Black Lives Matter. Initially, Democrats stood against Black Lives Matter as well because they saw it as a spoiler, because Black Lives Matter started under Barack Obama. It didn't start under Donald Trump. Nowadays, obviously, aside from like the BLM national movement and the organization, not the movement, but the organization itself is fraudulent, but that's unimportant. But when people say, oh, Black Lives Matter, everybody understands what it means. But that didn't stop Republicans from constantly saying, well, Black Lives Matter actually means you want to kill white people. Black Lives Matter actually means you want to kill cops. So there's an example of a decentralized grassroots mobilization that took place around a specific cause with BLM, okay, that organically became a movement that everybody understood, regardless of the right-wing opposition, mostly because of the negative polarization against Donald Trump at the time in the first Trump term, versus a decentralized organic movement, grassroots movement called Defund the Police, that the Democrats stood in opposition against because they thought it was bad for their election chances. That's precisely the reason why Democrats basically scored an own goal here and capitulated to right-wing framing on defund the police instead of actually talking about what this meant, right? Instead of trying to use this real groundswell of momentum that existed in their favor and redirecting this attitude towards more productive ways of changing the funding structure in localities all across the country to help focus more on the potholes and the social safety nets that have to exist but don't exist as a direct consequence of how funding has been slanted in the direction of the militarized police force rather than all of those other things like libraries and after-school programs and whatnot. The Democrats caved to right-wing framing on it and stood in opposition against it, and not a single vote was won as a consequence of that. The only thing they ended up doing in that process was radicalize people against the understandable resentment and frustration that people experienced. Do you understand? Kirsten Gillibrand has also apologized to Mamdani over the jihad comments. We did it. Anyway, everybody saying Diddy. Yes, I saw. The verdict is in for Diddy's federal criminal trial story developing. I'm sorry. I don't really care about this that much, man. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, he did it, you know? So this is going on. Hold on 1 second. I have to, this bill has now passed in the Senate. It's even worse than the way that women were raped, but you don't care, lol. There you go. Suck my dumb ass. This bill has now passed, and it's even worse than the limited amount of information that John Oliver's team had at the time. We've covered it already. Okay. Hasbara bot? No, that person was complaining because I said, I don't care. Yes, P. Diddy did it. I don't care about this as much. I'll get to it later. Okay. That's why. They wanted me to shift my priority and my focus away from the massively consequential bill that is going to kill tens of thousands of people a year by shutting their access off, by shutting them out of SNAP benefits that are necessary for their survival so they can't get food, and also their health care that is, once again, necessary for their survival. In the midst of all of this that's going on, someone is like, no, you have to immediately talk about the guy who is the most guilty person of all time. And then they tried to cynically weaponize the heinous crimes of P. Diddy to make it seem like I just don't care about these sorts of things. It's the most disgusting way to woke scold, to reshift my attention and priorities over to a billionaire sex offender or a multimillionaire sex offender. The Economist uses 10 charts to explain Trump's big, beautiful bill. The overhaul of taxation and spending would spell trouble for America. The 10-year debt impact is obviously, I don't even care about the deficit impact overall. This is just for the birds. Forecast change in GDP percentage from baseline scenario following the passage of the House original big, beautiful bill. Forecast debt as a percentage of GDP. Interest payments as a percentage of GDP. Changes to household income. Average percentage in change in after tax and transfer of. Okay, these are some of the. Okay, those are all the less important parts of the bill. Hold on. Yes, I know. I'm going to talk about the Alligator Alcatraz shit too. Hold on one second. SNAP losses in federal funding. Federal funding losses for SNAP from the House OBB 2029 forecast percentage. Okay, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. On the way to the House and Senate bills cut spending. One way the House and Senate bills cut spending is to cut programs that benefit poorer Americans. Food stamps, or to give the program its full title, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program is one such program. Analysis of the House bill by the Commonwealth Fund, a think tank that shows that this would particularly affect some states where Mr. Trump won very high shares of the vote, such as Mississippi. On the impact of health insurance, and this is like the redder they are, the higher the federal funding losses are. Okay? On health insurance, estimated people losing health insurance by 2034 under the House Big Beautiful Bill and other existing laws. The biggest change to social policy, though, is in health insurance. Through a mixture of tax changes and cuts to Medicaid, health insurance for the poorer, the number of Americans without health insurance will rise. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that the House bill would increase the number of uninsured Americans by nearly 12 million by 2034. Some estimates put this number at 17 million. Remember, these are some of the poorest people. They need it desperately. They need this Medicaid desperately so they can actually go and get some kind of health care. And that Medicaid actually funds a lot of these rural hospitals that are already in a dire state to begin with. And yet they still vote for it. As I've said over and over again, most people don't know what they're voting for. They vote on partisan lines. They vote on team sports. They vote on culture wars. It is up to smart, charismatic politicians to reframe the conversation around this. Okay? And if our leadership on the counter messaging side, on the opposition party side, the Democratic Party side, is not only not talking about the dangers of things like this, but also simultaneously leaning in to the underlying reasons as to why things like this have to pass through, then they're basically, all they're doing is basically making sure that their audiences, their voters, the Democratic Party voters, are also susceptible to this kind of framing, to this kind of messaging. The example I have used over and over again is on immigration. Democrats have never mentioned immigration as a national security threat in their history, okay? I mean, at least in contemporary Democratic Party messaging, until October 6th, when Joe Biden came out after 3 years, October 6, 2023, after 3 years of the Republicans dominating the media with narratives such as undocumented migrants are doing rapes and they're doing mass crimes over and over and over again. And they bullied the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party turned around and said, you know what, you're right. Immigrants do constitute a national security threat. And we are the ones who are going to militarize the border. We are the ones who are going to actually pass through proper funding for ICE and Customs and Border Patrol to deal with the pesky problem of migrant crime. Did that actually secure any votes? No, it didn't. All it did was basically create an environment where even Democratic Party voters themselves also now saw this as an admission that Trump was right. If anything, it probably pushed people to go and vote for the Republican Party. The same principles exist everywhere. Democrats' lack of interest in expanding these social safety nets, or the Democratic Party's interest in claiming that, yes, we are down to cut funding on these initiatives, that there is some bloat, there is some overhead, there is something that we need to... Okay, anyway. Health insurance, major cuts coming to health insurance. And like I said, some estimates put this at 17 million people losing access to health insurance in this country. These are some of the most desperate people that need it. Republicans are also using the OBBB to gut the Inflation Reduction Act, Joe Biden's signature climate law. The House bill included measures that critics say will choke off clean energy investment. Announced by the Rhodium Group, a research firm, suggests that under the IRA, America was on course to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 40% from 2005 levels by 2035. A de facto repeal would reduce that by more than 10 percentage points. The changes could hit utility bills too. The Senate version adds taxes on wind and solar projects that fail to comply with the rules that limit the use of materials from certain foreign countries, such as China. One less discussed but consequential provision buried in the tax bill is a tax on remittances. Early drafts proposed a rate as high as 3.5%, but the Senate version pulled the tax rate down to 1% and narrowed the types of transactions that this applies to. Modeling by the Center for Global Development, a think tank found that the impact on El Salvador would be equivalent to just 0.006% of gross national income, down from more than the 1% under the House bill. Still, after deep cuts to foreign aid earlier this year, the big booty cheeks bill will be another squeeze on some of the world's poorer countries. Even if the bill clears the Senate, several House Republicans have said they will oppose the latest version, citing concerns about cost and content. Whatever its eventual shape and ultimate fate, the big booty cheeks bill is a test of the Republican majority's fiscal credentials and of its loyalty to Donald Trump. And as I already mentioned, it also offers $175 billion to Trump's immigrant enforcement agenda. $175 billion, larger than some other countries' GDP, okay? Despite last-minute changes, the U.S. Senate deals big blow to the renewable energy. Senate bill complicates new wind and solar projects. Bill could lead to higher utility bills and job losses. House urged to improve usability of wind, solar tax credits. But while we're on the process of talking about, while we're talking about the insanity, okay, let's get to Trump's deportation policies. One of the new things that they have unveiled, a new fresh that they've unveiled, is this thing that they're calling Alligator Alcatraz. I think it's more so Alligator Auschwitz. It is a migrant facility smack dab in the middle of the Everglades, in the middle of the swamp in Pennsylvania. From what I understand, it's like a airport hangar that was previously owned by some like pedophile that the government has now restructured into a tent city. Did I say Pennsylvania? I meant Florida. I'm sorry. Smack dab in the middle of Florida. I don't know why I said Pennsylvania. This is what's going on.
And we are taking a look at the president now. You see the Homeland Secretary Kristi Noem is with him today, along with the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis. And as they take this tour through what we're calling, because they do, Alligator Alcatraz, now we're getting to see why they call it that. There is effectively, and I haven't heard anybody else use this wording, maybe they have, but it's like a moat of alligators that encircles this place, as many sides as it has. So, what's interesting about this is it's exactly transparently what the president has been talking about via the governor of Florida. And if we get a microphone that we can listen to, we will try. Let's try here. I think we may be just too far away from the microphone. Now, no one can find that better than the president of the United States that we have in Donald Trump, because he sees where the cameras are. He may jump in front of them and will immediately go.
No one is better than our big, beautiful president in recognizing where a camera is.
Back. Meanwhile, I want to talk with somebody who's really dealt with a lot of this issue of illegal aliens, the worst of the worst, being allowed in under the Biden administration. Congressman Chip Roy of the great state and border state of Texas. Congressman, your thoughts as the president is there looking at this facility where they can house up to 5,000 of the worst of the worst.
Harris, great to be on. And yeah, obviously we've experienced this firsthand in Texas. The difficulty of local law enforcement and states.
Congressman, let's listen real quickly to the president. I apologize. Let's watch.
Sure.
So I would say he should call the governor, Christie, and I'm sure you'd give him because his state is a disaster, and he doesn't do this.
Well, they have the original Alcatraz, so you guys could approve him being able to set one of these up over there. I'm sure the secretary would be happy to do that and provide. My sense is he's probably not going to bite on that, but I don't know that they'd be able to come in at cost because they tried to do this high-speed rail. They spent like $150 billion, no tracks. We've got a privately funded rail in Florida from Miami to Orlando. It costs the taxpayer zero, and it's very successful. So it's just a much different approach between states.
We're not going to let him get anywhere near Alcatraz. And it cost 100 times more than they thought. Now, he ought to come here and study this because he can learn a lot.
Yes? The first person checking into the room, sir. Tomorrow.
Hopefully tomorrow, within the next 24 hours.
They have the doctors, they have all the professionals.
There's going to be a security sweep because there have been civilians here, so they will sweep this multiple times to make sure there's nothing can be used as weapons or any contraband. And then once that's cleared, then they'll do. So it's really up to Secretary. I know has got people in the queue, and so they'll be ready to receive.
I think our viewers at home should know that this is air-conditioned facility. So if any of the news claims they're keeping them out in the hot, humid South Florida, that is wrong. It's probably 62 degrees here.
To be honest.
Hey,
Biden wanted me in here, okay? He wanted me. It didn't work out that way, but he wanted me in here.
What's your expectation of what this will do for the speed and force of deportation?
A lot of things, and they're both telling me that these people come in here, they want to go home. And they want to go home, so we immediately send them home. Where it's appropriate. Now, if somebody's a real killer, we don't send them anywhere. We put them in a maximum security. Look, what we inherited from this guy, this incompetent man, and his administration, which wasn't incompetent, it was radical left, lunatic, communist, whatever you want to say. I know most of them. What we inherited should never, ever be forgotten. What they've made us do. This is all because of an open border policy where 25 million people flowed in. From all over the world, from prisons, from all over the world they flowed in. For no reason whatsoever. We had, when I left, we had a very powerful border. We had no problem. He opened it up day one. He just opened the border, and people couldn't believe it.
That's right.
They were standing there. What are they doing? They said, go in. That's it. You look at the first day tapes. They opened it up and they said, go in, and that's where all of this began. But this is an amazing thing that they've done here.
Really but listen, people don't have to come here. If they self-deport and go home, they can come back legally. We will let them come back legally.
And there is a lot of self-deportation.
Yes. But if you wait and we bring you to this facility, you don't ever get to come back to America. You don't get the chance to come back and be an American again and work here. So
they weren't with us when the President and the Secretary Kevin and we went through the intake. So right when you do the intake, they have the information about voluntary departure. They have the ability. Obviously, you guys are funding that because it's a lot cheaper to do it that way. So even if they get brought to the front doorstep here, they still have an opportunity to just go back voluntarily, and then this way they're not.
Let's say they get in here like, hey, I want to stay here. I want to go back.
We can put them on a plane that day and take them home. We'll buy their plane ticket, go home, and then they get the chance to come back legally. If they wait and say we're not going to do that,
they can come back legally after a period.
Mr. President, you've talked recently about the idea of finding some way to get farm workforce and service sector workforce. And I think you've discussed somehow a program of people leaving on a sponsorship and coming right back. Can you give us a little more detail about that and why, in the view of some hardliners, it's not amnesty?
Take care of our farmers and hotel workers and various other people, and we're working on it right now, and Ron's going to be involved, and you're involved already. So we have a case, a lot of cases where ICE will go into a farm, and these are guys working there for 10, 15 years, no problem. The farmers know them. We're going to put, it's called farmer responsibility or owner responsibility, where they're going to be large.
My MAGA mom's idea of what the purpose of the big beautiful bill is about. Yes, it won't stay or stick. They are showing the reality to the world of what the deep state wanted and seeing who in Congress is truly against humanity. It's all going to change. This will be short-lived. Oh my God. They're absolutely delusional. If they don't agree with something, they flip it to fit their own personal fantasy narrative and make it so Trump is God in their make-believe reality. Yeah, by the way, he just said owner responsibility. This is slavery. Let me run this back again. Let me run this back again. Okay. Owner of a person. What Donald Trump is talking about here is humans. Okay. Undocumented migrants.
Farmers and hotel workers and various other people, and we're working on it right now, and Ron's going to be involved, and you're involved already. So we have a case, a lot of cases where ICE will go into a farm, and these are guys working there for 10, 15 years, no problem. The farmers know them. We're going to put, it's called farmer responsibility or owner responsibility, where they're going to be largely responsible for these people. And they know these.
Owner responsibility. I know he probably means farm owners, but I think we all know what he actually means, though, what he's signaling here. Because remember, earlier, Donald Trump said, earlier in the day, he said he doesn't want to deport undocumented migrants that have been working on these farms for an extended period of time. But he also simultaneously mentioned, we're not going to give them citizenship. No way. This is an admission of the ways in which we have the process of documented and undocumented workers. This is literally an admission of what I've been saying for years and years. Like the whole purpose of not giving the proper documentation to these workers who have work authorization is so that they can engage in indentured servitude, and they are utterly disposable whenever the farm owners or whenever the poultry facility owners, the bosses, decide that they want to wipe out the entire labor pool, only with the full knowledge that they can just like rehire a bunch of new, fresh, undocumented laborers in their place. This is an admission of how undocumented work exists in this country. Okay? You mean poor Americans and their children? What do you mean? The most famous incident that took place was with Purdue and numerous other poultry facilities where undocumented migrants that were hired deliberately, that were placed inside of trailer parks near the Purdue chicken facilities, the Purdue poultry facilities, had a lot of issues on the job sites. Like they had sexual assaults that were rampant, and they had a lot of back pay that they were not getting. When they got together and demanded their back pay and made their concerns be heard, the bosses at the plants called ICE on them and deported them, only to turn back around and rehire undocumented migrants and put them in the same trailer park. We keep these people undocumented deliberately. We know where they are. We have a lot of these people constantly checking in with ICE. We keep them undocumented deliberately. Okay? The difference between an undocumented and a documented worker is documentation. And the government ultimately controls whether or not they even stay documented. An example of this can be seen with the temporary protected status documented workers of Haitian background. When J.D. Vance, the vice president, and Donald Trump were running their campaign, they kept saying these guys were illegal aliens. They were not. They had the proper clearance and the proper paperwork. They had the temporary protected status. They recognize the Trump administration recognizes this reality, that the difference between someone who is a documented worker and an undocumented one is proper authorization, proper clearance is just paperwork. Paperwork that they can revoke at any point. Paperwork that they are choosing to revoke from a lot of the 500,000 plus Haitian migrants that are in the country right now. That's it. When people say, oh, why don't you come here the right way? What you're talking about is a lot of people who have come here the right way. People who are asylum seekers, people who got the proper clearance and the proper paperwork as temporary protected status recipients. But that can all go away overnight if the Trump administration chooses to take it away. That's it. Farmers are seeking empathy when they should feel rage? No, they're not seeking empathy. They're simply saying the truth, which is that if all of these undocumented migrants were to be forcibly removed, the American economy would come to a crippling halt. Undocumented laborers comprise, in some states, 40+% of the agribusiness. Okay? They are the farmhands picking the crops. Undocumented migrants, undocumented laborers are responsible for the majority of the agribusiness all around the country. I believe to 60% overall. Documented and undocumented migrant workers are responsible for 60% of all of the agribusiness workers. Undocumented and documented non-citizens are responsible for a major chunk of the construction as well, the construction sector as well. Silence, Kulak. This exploitation of labor will stop. Real cute, man. Yeah, that's what Trump is doing, right? Punishing the kulaks, right? No, he's not. He's punishing the workers, you moron. You're so edgy. I dislike the idea with a lot of the left calling this slavery. Banned. Okay. Slavery is so much worse. You're undermining the depravity of chattel slavery. Me. I'm so special. This is the modern version of direct indentured servitude, which is another form of slavery. Okay. Also, leftists have historically considered wage labor to also be wage slavery. Shut your up. I am not doing this optics game, okay? Standpoint theory time. Excuse me. I don't like the invocation of the word slavery here. Shut the up. According to the USDA, 40% of all farm workers in the U.S. are undocumented. That labor simply cannot be quickly replaced, if at all, through H-2A visas or the hiring of U.S. citizens. Mass deportation would lead to the closure of many farms and cause food prices to skyrocket. This is the reason why business leaders are begging Trump not to do this. Yes, I saw Kristi Noem ending TPS for 500,000 Haitian migrants in September. I saw that. This is precisely the reason why I said initially the same forces that are working in ICE will inevitably come for black people. They already are coming for black people. Who do you think is going to get targeted by ICE when they're looking for the 500,000 illegal Haitian migrants? This is why the whole we're going to sit this one out style weird Fed posting that we saw was idiotic from the jump, because the entire principle behind the ICE deportations is to make America a more white nation. A New York City federal court just ruled that Secretary Noem's decision to partially vacate Secretary Mayorkas' decision to extend TPS for Haiti was unlawful. This would restore the original expiration date of February 3rd, 2026, and potentially overrule Noem's recent decision to terminate it. Yay, Twitter news, no research. Twitter news. This is Aaron Reichling-Melnick. Like, when people say Twitter news, I don't think they understand who I'm sourcing this information off of. Do you think this is like Jack Posobiec and Wokeness account or something that I'm getting this information from? Or do you think I'm getting this information from a senior fellow at the American Immigration Council whose entire job is to report on exactly all of the new, this is his job. This is what he does. Are you so stupid that you see Twitter and you think, oh, dude, what an own? I'm joking. Okay, good joke. Twitter is all but a simple vehicle for summarized talking points coming from researchers who pour hours and hours of time into covering all of the latest things that are unfolding on every issue. That's not a fair comparison. There has still been far less militaristic response to protests until more recently, especially when more Latinos went out in the streets. What are you talking about? What? They aren't going to go after blacks that are legal. Dog, the 500,000 Haitian migrants that are currently on temporary protected status are quite literally legal until the point where the government decides unilaterally that they are not legal. And in the process, they absolutely will go after black people that are legal, okay? Blacks, this man says. How do you figure out if someone is a Haitian migrant on TPS versus just a black person that is a natural born U.S. citizen? You can't figure out if this is a black person that is an American citizen versus a Haitian migrant on temporary protected status, which is the proper authorization to exist on U.S. soil and work on U.S. soil. He has the proper documentation to be here, even if it's revoked later down the line unceremoniously. How do you figure that difference out? You arrest black people en masse, and then you figure out whether or not they're actually Haitian migrants or not. We already saw this with a ton of American citizens who are simply brown getting apprehended and arrested and falsely detained by ICE. Are you stupid? So far, 70 U.S. citizens have been falsely deported. Not only that, but they're also talking about denaturalizing U.S. citizens.
Governor DeSantis has proposed using national...
Any evidence for this, bro? I guess Trump is going to deport Obama now. Where are you getting this info from, bro? Any evidence for this, bro? Google is free, big dog. Type in the words U.S. citizen detained by ICE, or type in the words U.S. citizen falsely deported. Okay? Please, you don't have to have me spoon feed every piece of information because it requires me constantly having to re-explain things that I have explained so far. Okay? ICE may have deported as many as 70 U.S. citizens in the last 5 years. This is from the American Immigration Council. This number is only going to go up way higher. This is from 2015 to 2020. Okay? This number is going to go up even higher because this was not even the peak of mass deportations. Every other day, there is a new story. Every other day, there's a new story of an American citizen being falsely detained.
National Guard, deputizing them as immigration judges to get through this mass.
Get your papers right, dude. 70 is so little. 70 people who can't provide ID. One day, this will happen to your mother or you. Okay? And I hope people don't have that same exact attitude when it happens to you, you moron. You'll think, who cares, man? Who cares? Whatever.
Massive backlog of people in the immigration court. Would you be open to that?
Yes, he has my approval. Okay. That wasn't too hard to get, was it? He didn't even have to ask me, James. You didn't even need James to ask me. He has my approval, okay? Good. I also like what he's doing in Okeechobee. He has my approval for that, too. I don't know how we work that out, but we'll work it.
Yeah, they're going to deputize the National Guard.